Have you ever noticed something strange about your child? They can even solve 10 math problems perfectly when the teacher gives them directly. But the moment the same concept appears inside a word problem with a twist, they suddenly freeze. They stare at the question, they get confused, and sometimes they even say, I don't understand this. And as a parent, you wonder, how can my child be good in math but still struggle with word problems? Today, I want to explain the real reason why this happens, and it has nothing to do with intelligence. In fact, it often happens to even very smart children. I remember one of my students, he was very intelligent child. If I asked him to calculate something like 25 into 8, he would answer it immediately. But one day I gave him a simple word problem. The question was something like, a shopkeeper has 25 boxes, each box contains 8 chocolates. How many chocolates are there in total? The child looked at the question, then he looked at me, then again at the question. And after a few seconds, he said, Ma'am, I don't understand what to do. But the moment I told him, just multiply 25 into 8, beta, he solved it instantly. So, what happened here? The math was easy, but the thinking step was missing. This is what I call the thinking gap in math learning. Most children are trained to do procedures. They learn things like add these numbers, multiply these numbers, use this formula, follow this method. So their brain becomes very good at following instructions. But word problems require something a bit different. They require the child to read the situation, understand the story, identify the numbers, decide which operations to use. Okay? So, this process is called mathematical thinking. And unfortunately, many children are never trained to think this way. This is why many children struggle when the question has a small twist. For example, a child might solve this easily 40 minus 35. But if the question says, Ria weighed 35 kgs 6 months ago, she now weighs 40 kgs. What is the increase in the weight? Suddenly they feel confused. Not because the math is difficult, but because the brain is asking, what operation should I use? They just look for keywords, and one child said, we need to add the numbers as we have the keyword increase. And when children are trained only to execute steps, they panic when they have to decide the steps themselves. This problem also comes from how math is often taught. In many classrooms, children practice hundreds of similar questions. Add these numbers, multiply those, divide these. So the brain learns something called the pattern solving. But real mathematical intelligence comes from problem solving. That requires curiosity, logical thinking, interpretation, and mental visualization. So, what is the solution? Instead of only teaching methods and formulas, we must train children to break down the situation, visualize the problems, ask the right questions, connect numbers to real situations. In my sessions with children, I help them decode problems with the above steps. I focus on building thinking before calculation. Sometimes I even ask children questions like, what do you think this problem is asking? Or, what is the story behind this question? Slowly, their brain starts developing a problem solving habit. And once that happens, word problems becomes much easier. So, if your child struggles with word problems, please remember something important. It's not a sign that your child is weak in math, it simply means their brain has not yet been trained to think. And the moment that thinking skill develops, math suddenly becomes much easier and much more enjoyable. If you are a parent of a child between 8 and 12 years old and you want to help them become strong thinkers in math instead of just memorizing formulas, I regularly share tips, thinking strategies, and mental math techniques on this channel. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, and in the next video I will show you a simple thinking test that I use with children to instantly understand how their brain approaches math.